What's the current situation in Chihuahua and which cartels are fighting which ones in this state that borders the United States? In a previous video, I gave a brief explanation, but here I'll go a little bit more into detail. The main violent conflict we see in Chihuahua right now is between La Línea, or the Nuevo Cartel de Juárez, or the Juárez cartel, fighting against Maito Flaco in various parts of Chihuahua, but also very much centered on a border town called Ojinaga. Maito Flaco clearly wants to have more territorial control not only in Chihuahua, but areas that border directly in the United States, likely to enable him to push more fentanyl and drugs and smuggling operations into the US. In addition, Los Salazars, who used to be part of Los Chapitos before they broke off with them years ago, are in an active conflict against La Línea along the Chihuahua and Sonora border. This is also a very violent conflict, and clearly Los Salazars want to expand their base of operation in Chihuahua. The other conflict that historically occurred has now ended, and that was between La Línea and Los Chapitos. Ever since Los Chapitos announced their ceasefire and alliance with the Jalisco New Generation cartel, La Línea and Los Chapitos announced an agreement to halt all fighting because both groups had a history of fighting for Chihuahua. That violence is now over, and it's likely because CG&G has a very deep-seated alliance with La Línea, and they probably served as mediators between La Línea and Los Chapitos to end that fighting. That is the main cartel wars that are going on, but I think it's also very important to highlight one key piece, is specifically if we're looking at Ciudad Juárez. And that is a lot of the violence and assassinations and murders that occur in Ciudad Juárez, with borders El Paso, Texas, is not necessarily tied to cartel wars, but more likely local criminal groups, with a lot of these criminal groups being human smuggling networks that push migrants from Juárez into El Paso. There are dozens and dozens of human smuggling groups and local criminal networks that operate across the border that are not necessarily allied to a cartel or part of a cartel, but they simply pay a plaza fee to operate in those areas. And these groups fight locally between each other outside of the scope of the cartel. And a lot of the violence that we see in Ciudad Juárez, specifically these assassination murders, can be explained by that. These groups fighting for control for these migrants and these smuggling routes into El Paso. That's the latest situation in Chihuahua. Thank you very much.